Rumours have been circulating that Apple's next base model iPhone will feature a larger display, and that could be a potential catalyst for something much more worrying that I want to talk about today, so let's waste no time. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and I don't know about you, but I love a small smartphone. And unfortunately, we just don't get many of those these days, at least not viable options. But I feel like the current Pixel 9 Pro, the S25, the iPhone 16 Pro are sizes that are pretty reasonable. And actually, if I have to balance out the internal specs, the cameras, the battery, and so on, with the size of the smartphone, I think we've landed on a pretty good sweet spot. Do you remember the Zenfone 9 from Asus? Whenever I mention compact smartphones, people love to point that smartphone out in my comment section. But the truth is, despite having a 0.3-inch smaller corner-to-corner display on the Zenfone, it's actually almost identical in dimensions to the base model Galaxy S24, which is for all intents and purposes the same size as the base model S25 from this year. It's not any smaller than the Samsung, although people like to point out that it's this unicorn-sized phone. The internet really is an interesting place for sure. But I do think that this size, a display no larger than a 6.2 inches corner to corner, with these hyper thin bezels and a thin profile, makes for a really good smartphone chassis. And sizing up just a little bit gets you these bigger camera sensors and lenses with a battery boost as well. And those are compromises that I am willing to make. The Pixel 9 Pro for me is perhaps the best balanced smartphone of all time. I know the camera visor is a little bit divisive for some people, but I think it looks really good. It sets it apart from the competition. And the flat sides have a taper to them as well, so it's not completely harsh on the sides. And generally, combined with the smaller footprint that we have here, it's a much nicer phone to hold than something like the XL, which doesn't really fit right. And even when you stick a case on the Pixel 9 and the Pixel 9 Pro, because it's not crazy huge to start with, the screen size feels just right, and actually the phone doesn't feel massive. The display itself is great for watching content, typing on the keyboard, getting plenty of information density in, but simultaneously having a screen element that's big enough that you can actually read anything that's on it. And all in battery life of this generation, that is pretty good as well. The Pixel for me is one of the best rounded smartphones of all time, and it's not behemoth of a phone. Actually, I have big props for the 9A this year because though it is roughly the same size as its full fat counterpart, ironically it does carry less weight, around 186 grams instead of the 199 of the Pro. And it does that while sporting a larger battery, as the 5100 mAh cell is noticeably larger than the 4700 of the standard Pro, and chuck in almost the totally flat back, the flat sides, the flat front, and what you have is more of a slab than anything else, but it feels like the optimal way to shape your smartphone and should pretty much fit everyone's hands and pockets. As you might expect, it's probably going to be the case that companies will follow suit to what Apple's doing. It seems like whatever that company does, other companies like to copy it or follow on from it. It's not always the case, but it is something that tends to happen specifically with physical design elements. And the next iPhone screen increasing in size is perhaps one of those things that I feel many others are going to end up copying for the simple fact of they don't want their screens to look worse on paper. A 6.1 or a 6.2 versus a 6.3, you kind of get the idea. But is it a possibility that phones are just going to get exponentially larger? I mean, we're at that stage now where the standard flagship size for a smartphone is basically the size of a small tablet, not a large phone. And though I do appreciate the extra room that we get for internal hardware, there needs to be a healthy range of smaller options to go alongside it. And no, I said smaller because it's unrealistic for me to expect everyone to come out with an iPhone mini-sized device, sure. But there are millions of smartphone buyers out there who don't want a ginormous smartphone for a myriad different reasons actually. If you have smaller hands, these phones are an absolute nightmare. If you put a thick chunky case on it to protect your $1,000 investment, you just end up with a small boulder in your pocket instead of a smartphone. And maybe you just don't want something heavy to lug around. How many of you run? How many of you have run into the issue that I've run into where I'm carrying around my OnePlus 12 in my hands? I have to hold it in my hands when I run because in my pocket, it's just far too much weight to be flung around. I want something small and lightweight that won't fly around in my pocket. And actually it's quite funny that Samsung came out with the Galaxy S25 Edge, because I feel had that company, carried the same ethos, the smaller, the lighter, the airier design, and made it around a 6.1 or 6.2 inch mark instead of the bigger screen that it has got, far more people would have been interested in it, and you might not have seen so many people going, what's the point of this smartphone? Call it the S25e or something as a callback to that wonderful smartphone that still to this day has a bit of a cult following. I would genuinely pay $1,000 or whatever it costs to get one of those, because for that phone that they made to be as large as it is, makes little sense until you realise that the rumoured iPhone Air potentially upcoming is going to be that size as well, replacing the Plus model. I mean, it all starts to add up a bit now. There is of course the possibility that this increased screen size, similar to the whole Zenfone 9 and Galaxy S24 situation, is simply that, a screen size bump and not a chassis size one. That has no impact on the overall size of the smartphone because maybe they're using thinner bezels, for example. And I'm just not sure that's going to be the case. And I only say that because if you look at the difference between the base model iPhones and the Pro models, the slimming down of the bezels is a considerable factor in that. And it's going to be a little bit too close for comfort in my opinion if they decide to remove that difference between the two. It's a theory over actual fact or anything that I've seen, but one that I think is based on pretty sound reasoning. I'm of the opinion that there's certainly a place for the XL and the Ultra smartphones. Those are the ones that I'm really excited about, by the way. But I do think there should be an option to go bigger, but to also go smaller. To balance hardware features, larger displays, bigger batteries for something that's a little bit more money. And I mean, heck, Samsung's formula for the big screen phone that has a stylus built into it has been around for over a decade, and that's because it's a killer combo and one that I'm glad we still get to see yearly updates to, even if those updates are a little underwhelming these days. For some people, their smartphone is also their only device. There's no desktop computer, there's no laptop even, just a big phone. And for those people, big phones do make way more sense. Imagine doing a big purchase like a car on a tiny little iPhone mini. I'd be in pieces just trying to get through it and read everything on the screen. So I'm not here to hate on big phones, I just want a bigger option and a smaller option, and I don't want that reasonable phone size to disappear. It's looking like we might be about to lose the brilliant form factor that we settled on this year. The one change that we saw from the big dogs, in particular the Pixel 9 and Pixel 9 Pro series, the ideal size compromise, could be moved on from preemptively thanks to Apple's design change. Phones don't need to be absolutely massive, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks this way either. Am I overreacting here? Is there more than meets the eye to this whole situation? And what do you think about smartphones potentially getting bigger again? Are you like me, you don't want to carry around some absolutely huge phone all the time? Or do you not really care because since your phone is your main device, you're happy to concede a bit of pocket space for the additional screen real estate and the hardware benefits? As I said before, a big draw for me is that, especially a lighter phone, but also a considerably smaller phone, I'm a runner. I don't want to have to carry around a massive phone with me all the time. It's what I've had to do for the last year or so, and I'm just not enjoying that experience at the moment. Anyway, let's start a discussion in the comments section, and whilst you're down there, be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I will catch you later. Cheers.